In this example, we're going to subtract two mixed numbers, and notice that in this case we have two different denominators. And if I mention things like least common multiple, greatest common factor, or when we're rewriting the fractions, you got to multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. If you're not sure what I'm doing there, make sure you watch the videos at the beginning of the section of this worksheet, or in this section of the examples you're working on. So notice that in this case, my least common multiple for these two numbers are going to be 30. So that means I got to multiply this 6 by a 5 to make it into a 30. And I'm going to do the same to the numerator. Multiply this one by 6 to make it into a 30. And I have to do the same to the numerator as well. Next, I'm going to simplify. So I get 8 and 12 thirtieths minus 3 and 25 thirtieths. So now, next, I notice is that if I were to subtract it directly right now, I would end up with a negative number for my numerator, which is fine, but you have to do an extra step according to that. So there's actually two different methods you could do from here, or several methods, but I'm going to show you two of them. So I'm going to go ahead and just subtract it first, because in the previous example in this worksheet, I showed you how to rewrite this fraction, and then I showed you how to just subtract it using negative. So in this case, I'll just start it off the other way. So I'm just going to go ahead and subtract my whole numbers first, right, because it's 8 minus 3. I'm going to get 5. And when I subtract my fractions, since they have the same denominator, I can subtract the same numerators, right? The numerators over the same denominator, and I'll get 5 over 12 minus 25, which is negative 13. And notice, we can't leave a mixed number with a negative numerator like that. So this, you could interpret it. This is saying like 5 plus negative 13 thirtieths. It's the same exact thing. We can rewrite it that way. They're equivalent. And now, when you're adding a negative, it's the same thing as just saying, okay, we're going to do 5 and take away 13 thirtieths. That's also equivalent to that as well. And now, I have a whole number minus a fraction. So all I have to do is rewrite this into a fraction. So to make the 5 into a fraction, that's the same thing as saying 5 divided by 1. 5 divided by 1 is still 5, so I can rewrite that way as well. And next, I'm going to need a common denominator in order to combine these two fractions. So the least common multiple for 1 and 30, I know it's going to be 30. Which means this one, I don't have to do anything to rewrite it because it's already a 30. But this one, I have to multiply by 30 to make it into a 30. Then I'll do the same to the numerator. And then next, I'm going to simplify. 5 times 30, I get 150 over 30 minus 13 over 30. And then I just subtract 150 minus 13 over the same denominator, because you can combine them now. And then next, when I simplify 150 minus 13, that's 137. And we can leave this here as 137 over 30. It's improper. Improper fraction means the top is bigger than the bottom. But if they tell you to write it as a mixed number, then you got to change it. You got to fix it. And one thing to point out, too, is that when your directions say simplify, a lot of people think that simplify means to write it as a mixed number. No, those are two different things. Simplify a fraction means make sure they don't have any common factors greater than 1. So you got to find the greatest common factor that you could divide into both of these. And if the greatest common factor is 1, then it's already simplified. So that's one case. And if you don't know how to find the greatest common factor, make sure you watch the video in the beginning of this section of the worksheet. Otherwise, if they tell you write it as a mixed number, then we have to write it as a mixed number. And the process behind writing it as a mixed number is that, this is improper because the top is bigger than the bottom. And the reason why is because the most you could have out of 30 is 30 before it becomes improper. Right? That's the maximum number I can have. Once I go to 31, it's bigger than the bottom. So 30 is the most. Right? 30 out of 30. That's one whole amount. And now I'm just going to keep repeating this process, 30 out of 30, until I get back to 137. And there is a shortcut to this, I know. But I'm not going to show you the shortcut because I want you to figure it out for yourself. It's more power in figuring out the faster way to do this. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. So far I have 3, 6, 90. Plus another 30 out of 30. That's 120. So if I add another 30 to that, it's 150. It's too much. So now, again, I have 30 plus 30 is 60. Another 60 is 120 so far. Right? You can see, look, if I added another 30, I get 150. But we're trying to get to 137. So it's too much. I can't add another 30. So now I just got to find a difference between 120 and 37. How many more do I need to get to 137? So I just subtract it now. And you can see I just need 17 more. So for this last one, it's going to be plus 17 out of 30. So you can see when I add 30 plus 30 plus 30 plus 30 plus 17, I get back 137. And now I'm just going to rewrite it one more time because, as I mentioned earlier, 30 out of 30 is just one whole amount. So that means I have 1, 2, 3, 4 whole amounts. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, plus 17 out of 30. And then my last step would be just to combine those whole amounts. So 137 out of 30 is the same thing as 1, 2, 3, 4 whole amounts, and a remainder of 17 out of 30. And that would be my final answer as a mixed number. So again, these are two. This is an improper fraction. This is a mixed number. And when they say simplify doesn't mean go from here to here. This is going from improper to mixed. Simplifying is a different story. It's just saying to find the greatest common factor that could go into these. And if your greatest common factor is a 1, that means it is simplified. And then here was the second method. So we found earlier the least common multiple was 30. So I have to multiply both of these by 5 and both of these by 6. So I'm just going to show you another way to do this. So 8 and 12 30ths minus 3 and 25 30ths. So if we subtract it, we already know that it's going to be a negative. So what we can do is we could actually rewrite this fraction so this number becomes bigger than that one, so we don't end up with a negative when we subtract it. So let me just show you. So what I do is this. I'm going to split up the 8. That's the same thing as 7 plus 1 and 12 30ths. Right? If I add these together, I get back the original, 8 and 12 30ths. So I can do that. Then I'm going to bring down my 3 and 25 30ths. And now I'm going to split this up one more time. 7 plus 1 plus 12 30ths. That's the same thing as this, and we know that is the same as that. So I can do that as well. And then just rewrite that one. Next, I'm going to rewrite this number 1 so that I can add it with this fraction. So I want to add these two together. So in order to add these together, I make the 1 into a fraction. Right, 1 out of 1 is still 1. In order to add these two, you need a common denominator. So my common denominator for these two would be 30. So I need to multiply both of these by 30. So times 30 times 30. Then we're going to get 7 and 30 out of 30. When I simplify that, plus 12 out of 30 minus 3 and 25 out of 30. And now that these match up, I can add these two together, right, over the same denominator. It's 30 plus 12 all over 30. Right, the denominators match. Rewrite the last part. And I'm showing you a lot of steps because, I'm trying to show you the thinking behind this. Eventually, when you get really good at this, you don't have to show all these steps. But this is just so you can see my thinking and how we're transitioning from one to the next problem. To show you how I'm getting these answers. So now, look, I get 7 plus 42 30ths minus 3 and 25 30ths. And now you can see we're getting closer. So now we're going back to something else. I can combine these two together, which gives me 7 and 42 30ths minus 3 and 25 30ths. And now you can see that this 7 and 42 30ths, so if I go back to the original, was this 8 and 12 30ths. So these are equivalent. So I did show you a lot of steps, but there's going to be, eventually with practice, you're going to get faster at it, and you don't have to show all those steps. But now that we have these so that the denominators match, I can subtract my whole numbers. 7 minus 3 is 4. And then I can subtract the fractions, 42 minus 25, over the same denominator. Right, since these match up, we can subtract them now. And now, when I simplify, I get 4. And then when I subtract 42 and 25, subtract 20, I would get 22. So I get, 17 30ths. So I get 4 and 17 30ths. So that was my final answer. And now if I go back to the other one that we did earlier, you can see we got the same exact answer. So it's a different method, same answer. And in math, when you do two different methods get the same answer, it's a very good chance that what you did was correct. So that's the alternate method to subtracting these two, is basically rewriting this fraction so this number becomes bigger. Do that whole process we just did there. Looks like a lot of steps, but like I said, with practice, you don't have to show all those steps. Eventually, you'll be able to do it a little bit faster.